details. We spend so much time and energy about the wedding. How much time do we put into the preparation of marriage? The wedding day is one day. Marriage, inshallah, will last a lifetime. Inshallah. Right? So if you think about it, most of us spend so many days and weeks, time and money on a marriage. Average American wedding costs about $31,000. And some of the South Asian weddings are much bigger. You have bigger families, and you have so many more days, not just one day. So imagine what that looks like. Other countries, other weddings cost more or less. But that much money, time, and energy in one day. How much time do we spend preparing ourselves for marriage? We go to college. Many of us, alhamdulillah, are privileged to do that. We spend so much time researching what college do I want to go to, who's giving me the best financial aid, what majors do they have, will that major give me something, and then let me do an internship so I can get a job. We spend so much time researching and educating ourselves for that. We go to the classes, we do all of that preparation for a job. But what do we do for marriage, for our relationship, the institution that has an impact on you and your offspring and your future? Most of us do very little, and we want to change that, inshallah. And so part of that is through the education. I'm not sure where that's going.
Good. Next.
Okay, there. So part of what we're trying to do today is to start helping you, give you the resources of what you need. So a lot of the work that we're presenting today is based on the research that we've done at the Family and Youth Institute. Asking young people, asking individuals who are single, what are the issues and challenges you're facing? Asking people who are married and divorced, what did you go through? What would you have wished you would have known? And then creating these resources for you. So a lot of the material that I'm talking about today, if you go to our website, you'll find all of those material in the marriage toolkit. If you see that red heart thing, they're on the website. You'll see all of these resources based on the stages of marriage, marriage preparation. So I encourage you, if you're not familiar with the website, to really go there to constantly get resources on marriage preparation and marriage strengthening. And those are some of the social media platforms where almost every week there's something related to marriage that we share. Okay. So what we want to try to do today is understand why is it important to prepare for marriage, learn how to prepare, and identify these resources. So for those of you who are looking to get married, and those of you who are parents who are trying to help their children to get married, this is actually a summary of a 6-hour workshop that we do. So this is a summarized version. And so we'll try to go into as much detail as possible, but we recognize we won't get into everything. So feel free to ask these questions afterwards, as well as go look on the website for additional information. So in terms of... Okay. So what are your expectations of marriage? Those of you who are not married, what do you expect marriage to be like? Happy. What else? Romantic. What else? Companionship. Enjoyable. right? We have all of these positive expectations. And those expectations are actually based on a lot of what we're seeing and hearing. But what we don't realize is marriage is hard work. And this is a quote from a young woman who met her husband in college. They knew each other for at least 2-3 years, and then they decided to get married. And when they got married, they tried working on their marriage for 10 years, and it didn't work out. And they ended up getting a divorce. And one of the things that she said was, I wasn't thinking about marriage as such a big life decision. Right? She didn't really think about it that big deal. I thought I was going to get married and have this great, comfortable life. I wasn't anticipating all the problems that come with marriage. I was just thinking about the fairy tale part. It's just going to be like a permanent dating. Right? All the positive stuff, all the fun stuff, we'll live happily ever after. She wasn't prepared for the life challenges, the character building opportunities that marriage provides. And so because she didn't prepare for that mentally or in terms of education, she didn't have the life skills to deal with difficult conversations, to deal with when you feel hurt. How do I handle it? How do I have those conversations? How do I help my spouse or myself be the best person possible, right? All of these skills, she didn't learn in school, and most of us haven't learned in our houses or masajids, so there's no opportunity to have those skills and develop those skills. All of these skills, which are incredibly important in marriage. And so we often have these unrealistic expectations in marriage when you think about marriage. That what marriage is going to be one big happy fairy tale. That if you truly love one another, you won't have no problems. Love conquers all, right? And for marriage to actually work, if you just loved each other, we wouldn't have problems. If you just understood me, if you loved me, you would understand me. And if you understood me, you would be able to read my mind. That doesn't work that way, right? Sometimes people will feel that if I get married, everything is perfect. I've gone to school, I get married, now life is perfect. That's where the interesting opportunities begin with marriage. There's a reason why marriage is half our deen. Because that's when you start to get tested. You can be the most sincere person and the most patient person until you live with somebody who's different and disagrees with you. Then how do you deal with it? Right? So that's where a lot of these tests come up. And so we have all these unrealistic expectations of marriage, and so when we actually encounter it and prepare for it, we get overwhelmed and we have a lot of issues. And what we see is in America, 1 out of 2 people get divorced. Okay? And that's not very different than the Muslim community. When I got married 23 years ago, of the people who got married in the same year, half of my Muslim friends, exactly half, are now divorced. Now, divorce is allowed and acceptable in Islam, but it's hard. It takes a toll on who you are. And it has long-term impact, especially if you have children. It's not easy. So if we can avoid divorce, let's try doing that. Let's do the work that needs to be done. And sometimes people think, well, if I get married and things don't work out, I'll get a divorce. But guess what? You carry emotional baggage from the first relationship. And the likelihood of you getting divorced again increases with each marriage. Right? So you still need to address the issue. And that's part of what we want to do, is we want to address issues beforehand. So what are the causes of divorce? Right? Many different causes. And again, for those of you who are not married, this is not to scare you. It's to help you go in eyes wide open. Know what you're getting into. Know what to expect. when there is infidelity, these are the issues that are impacting wider society as well as within the Muslim community. Almost half of my clinical practice right now, my clinical practice is fully Muslim, right? Half of it has to do with infidelity and pornography. Right? Half has to do with infidelity or pornography that's impacting our marriages. Some of us are marrying too young. We see a person, oh, she's beautiful. I want to marry her. But you're not mature. If you're not mature, how are you going to handle these difficult conversations and these difficult decisions? You have to have that maturity. The lack of equality in relationship. Sometimes, many of us, something will happen. We don't say anything about it. Right? We just keep it quiet. Just be patient, patient, patient. And then that patience turns into resentment. And that resentment then explodes because the toilet paper was not put in the right place. And the other spouse is saying, why are you screaming and yelling over toilet paper? Why are you screaming and yelling over the spoon being in the wrong drawer? Right? It's because of resentment. And if we don't address that resentment early on, it's going to cause major problems. Right? There's also lack of preparation. So if you think that marriage is going to be a happy fairy tale, and we're going to live happily ever after, and love conquers all, when you have your first fight, which you will, for sure, very quickly. I think it took us, 6 weeks? Or maybe 3 weeks, I can't remember. But when you have that first fight, then you're like, oh, is this marriage going to last? Is it going to happen? Did I marry the right person? And all of these questions start coming up. Alhamdulillah, those questions came up for me. But alhamdulillah, I had taken courses and realized, nope, this is part of the process. That honeymoon is going to last for a little bit, and then the reality would hit. And alhamdulillah, 23 years of marriage, we're still here. Right? But if you know that these are the causes, you can then address those issues beforehand. Right? And so what we see in terms of the Muslim research, I'm not sure if I'm putting, okay, wait. In terms of the research on Muslims, right? The top 5 reasons for conflict amongst Muslims, number 1, guess what? In-laws. For those of you who are married, you're probably not surprised by this. Second is, for women, it's finances. For men, it's different interests. She's interested in one thing, he's interested in another thing. And so having that lack of shared time, shared interest was problematic. For women, it was number 3. For women, number 3 was spending time together. And for men, it was attitude towards sex. For women, number 4 was family or friends. And for men, it was the same thing. So if we know these are sources of conflict, it's important to address those issues up front. And address these issues throughout the process as well, even after you get married and during the courtship process. Right? And 1 out of 2 individuals report at least one major issue in the relationship. So if you're not married yet, you realize that there will be some things you will never agree upon. Ever. And you have to recognize, is that something I'm okay with? If it is, go for it. But if it's something so important, then don't go forward with a relationship. I've had families pressure their daughters or their sons to marry a certain individual. They're very well educated, they're from a good family, everything's great about it, great akhlaq. The one thing is he didn't pray. And this is something for the sister. She was confused. She's like, well, I pray, and prayer is, that's extremely essential pillar of Islam. If you don't do that, what about the other stuff? Right? But she was pressured. No, you should marry him. Why aren't you marrying him? Then all of this pressure. But if she would have gone into that marriage, alhamdulillah, she knew she had taken this course and had this information. She was able to withstand and say, no, this is not for me. He may be a great person, but just not for me. Because my deen is so important. And so again, having this knowledge helps you make decisions even in difficult situations. Okay, what we also know from the research is, as soon as I can get it to you. Oh, okay. Other thing is, what we find is for American Muslims is that 80% of the divorced individuals did not participate in any formal pre-marriage education. Now, I know in Malaysia they have a lot of programs on pre-marriage education, alhamdulillah. And same in Singapore. I'm not sure about Indonesia. But I know in Malaysia and Singapore they have a lot of programming. But for the rest of the Muslim world and Muslim community, this is a new concept. And what we find is those who are not prepared also tend to do worse in marriage. Now again, my mother looks at me and she said, we never had this. Why do you guys have this? Why do you have to talk to your husband? Like when we were talking for marriage, why do you have to talk to him? Because I'm going to potentially marry him. And she said, no, you don't need to talk to him. As long as he's good, it's fine. As long as you don't need to talk. But to realize that you need this information to make sure you are on the same page. And you do have shared values, right? And all of that stuff, if you don't have that preparation, you're going to be stuck in a relationship, right? And it's not going to be very helpful. And it's not going to be something that brings you closer together as a couple or in terms of your relationship with Allah. So pre-marriage education is important, but one of the reasons people did not get married education was because of stigma. And that's something we'll talk about in the next session about stigma within the Muslim community. How do we change it? The other thing is that pre-marriage education reduces by 33%, 1 in 3 chances, that divorce. Okay? And engaged couples who complete pre-marriage education have less negative communication styles. And what we see from the research is you can determine the likelihood of a marriage succeeding or not by how a couple communicates with 95% accuracy. 95% accuracy. Think about that. And so again, what we see from from the individuals who have kind of had the opportunity to go through the process is the realization that I didn't know that might be something that you should read about or study. It never occurred to me that something you just have to work at. It takes time and effort. And then there are resources available out there. You know, we were able to, a young man says, we were able to make the decision to get married, make the announcement within 3 months. People were willing to throw parties, slaughter lamb for us, but no one ever said, hey, you want to sit down, talk about marriage? There is no premarital counseling, and it's important. You should do it. If any elder in the community, any friend, anyone just would have said it, but again, as a community, we need to encourage that and remind people. Again, a lot of times people say, well, my parents did a different way. Why do we have to do it? A lot of the parents will say that. Well, why do we have to be intentional about this? Why do we have to have classes about it? And again, different time and place. Yeah, even though I was raised here, it's a different time and place and culture. And so we need to understand how things change and address that. And for many of you whose parents may be back in Indonesia or Malaysia, the culture, while there are a lot of similarities, you're currently in a different environment. And if you are the second generation, it's a different environment too. And if you're marrying people from outside the culture, that's another consideration you need to think about. And so all of these different factors, you really need to be thinking about, will this work for me? It may work for others. What works for me? What works for other people? And how do you address different expectations of marriage? Okay, so I'm going to hand it over to Nadeem.
going to stand here because I got to look at my notes. I'm not young like her. I have to look at my notes. So, one of the first things that Samira has talked about is the importance of marriage preparation, right? The fact that you want to get ready. And what we're essentially doing is we're tying our camel. As the Prophet ﷺ said, you trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but first you tie your camel. So you have to exert your utmost effort to make sure that you're doing things in the best possible fashion. And then after that, if you've exerted all of your energy to do the things the best way possible, then it's up to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You make dua that Allah blesses the marriage and you go forward on that. So part of this process, what we're going through here, trying to learn some of the different tips and techniques that can help enhance the marriage, inshallah. So, I don't know if the video, I think you might have to click back there to make the video work. Yeah. Somebody hit the play button on the video. I'll just show you a short video. And the sound is coming out of that computer. We'll check that part of the testing. So what is fixing that? So this is a video that the FYI had created, helping people understand some of the factors that they should consider going into marriage. And as Samira mentioned, all of these are online on our website.
Do your homework. Address issues before becoming emotionally involved. Ask difficult. With reports of unhappy marriages and a rising divorce rate among American Muslim couples, how can you decrease the likelihood of becoming another statistic? 1. Know yourself before marriage. Why do you want to get married? And are you ready to get married? Understand your personality, communication style, values, unresolved issues, and expectations. Identify characteristics you're looking for in a partner. This will help you find a good fit for you. 2. Do your homework. Address issues before becoming emotionally involved. Ask difficult questions and conduct background checks. Do not confuse chemistry with compatibility. Pay attention to red flags. 3. Discuss everything. Your goals and priorities. Where do you see yourself in 5 years, 10 years? And how does work and family fit into your future plans? 4. Go to premarital counseling before announcing your engagement. A counselor will help you explore compatibility, identify challenges, and teach communication and conflict resolution skills. 5. In-laws. How much time do you spend with your family now? How much do you expect to spend with them once you're married, once you have children, and when they are old? 6. Conflict resolution. Understand that arguments are inevitable. It's how couples handle them that determines whether they'll get into fights. Learn how to identify underlying issues and talk about what's bothering you. Remember, you can only control your actions, not your spouse's. 7. Continuing education. Many people romanticize about marriage. Be realistic and educate yourself about the phases of marriage, common challenges and skills that will set your marriage up for success. So how can you learn more about strengthening your marriage? At the Family and Youth Institute, we specialize in providing practical, research-based marriage education. Whether you are considering marriage, engaged, married, or divorced, we have resources for you. We offer interactive workshops that help you prepare for marriage and or enhance your marriage, as well as free articles, videos, infographics, and webinars. To learn more, join our email list and find us on Facebook and Twitter. Support us by sharing this video and donating so we can develop more resources.
Alright, so that video is a quick 3-minute summary of a lot of different things that we're talking about. So if you want to refresh, you can go online to our website, to any of these social media sites and watch that video. And the idea is that it gives you a quick high-level summary of a lot of things we're talking about. So there are 2 concepts that were introduced that are related but slightly different, and I want to clarify them. Marriage preparation versus premarital counseling. Marriage preparation is before you're engaged. you're thinking about marriage, you're thinking you don't really have anybody in mind, you're thinking what should you be doing. So it's information you're collecting and you're gathering to help you achieve this long-lasting happy marriage, inshallah. And so the types of activities that you'll be doing is you'll be reading up on books, reading up articles, attending workshops, etc. Premarital counseling is you actually have somebody identified that you specifically are talking to a particular person about marriage. And hopefully this is happening before you've made the announcement. Because once you've made the announcement, as Samira said, it's a snowball effect. Things happen so quickly, and then even if you figure out something is wrong, there's so much pressure on you. It's like, oh my God, how can you cancel the wedding? Because we already announced it, we already printed the invitation card, we sent it to everybody, and then you figure out, wait, this person's not for me, and you want to cancel. It's like, hey, it's wrong, it's bad. So there's a lot of pressure that happens, right? So before any kind of announcement is made, you want to go through the pre-marital counseling process. And what you do is you're meeting with somebody who's an expert in marriages, right? Could be a therapist, could be a counselor, somebody who deals with marriages all the time, and they'll help you assess your individual readiness. Are you mature enough? Are you ready to get married? And between the two of you, both the two parties that are engaged, they'll talk to both at the same time and assess the level of compatibility. Like, are you two, really the right for each other or not? Are there potential areas where there are areas of conflict? And maybe because you're young, you're in love, you're goo gaga, it's all nice and dandy, and you're overlooking all those red flags, that a third party can look and say, wait a second, did you ask about this issue? Did you talk about this? Did you address this particular thing? Because you're so much in love that you forgot about all those things, and so they're going to force you, like, no, you have to talk about this first. You have to discuss this particular issue and explore and make sure this will not be a cause for conflict later on. And as well, learning about communication skills. As Samir mentioned, a lot of marriage issues come from communication and miscommunication at that. So part of the premarital counseling is learning about each other's communication styles and learning to communicate more effectively, inshallah. So how do you go about doing this? Well, there are a lot of things that you should be doing. There are a lot of things you could be doing. We won't have time to go into all of that. As Sarah mentioned, we actually have a full day workshop. We spend 6 hours going through a lot of different tasks. But to start off with, 2 very basic items. Get to know yourself and get to know your partner. This will become extremely key. And for the parents in the room, I hope you're taking note of what you should be guiding your children to be doing. So as we're going through this process, you want to guide your children to get into marriage education. You want to guide your children into getting premarital counseling. As your child is getting of age and wants to talk about marriage, ask them, have you gotten to know yourself? What are the things? Go look up some resources online. So, what does getting yourself mean? How do you get to know yourself? This is an everlasting process, first of all. It's a never-ending thing that you're constantly going to be asking yourself, who am I? What do I like doing? What are the things that I enjoy doing? What are the things that I don't enjoy doing? Understanding who you are really as a person. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran where He says, وَفِي الْأَرْضِ آيَاتٌ لِلْمُوقِنِينَ وَفِي أَنفُسِكُمْ أَفَلَا تُبْصِرُونَ. And on the earth are signs for those who are certain in faith, and in yourselves, then will you not see. So there are signs for us to reflect on, inside ourselves, as to who we are, what makes us tick, knowing what are the things that we like and what we don't like. And so being able to answer very specific questions. What is your personality like? People talk about type A, type B, type 1, type 2. Whole bunch of these personality types, right? You can go online, Google Myers-Briggs or some of the other personality type questionnaires, and they'll help you understand what is your personality type. Are you the touchy-feely kind? Are you the more cold, concentrated kind? Who are you? What makes you think? What is your communication style? Again, there are people who are very direct in their communication style, there are people who are indirect. And I'll give an example from our marriage, right? We've been married, as Samira mentioned, 23 years. So my family growing up, we have a very direct communication style. You say things straight up. Samira's family is a very indirect communication style. This is my deal. Like, they go around about to point things out. And so when we first got married, it was hard for both of us. When I go to our parents' house, they're like, this guy is so rude. He just says things. I'm like, of course, I have something I say it. And then when Samira comes to my parents' house, they're like, what's her problem? Why can't you just say it? She's like talking and talking and talking. Just say what you want to say. Right? Two different styles. Once I was at her parents' house, and her dad says to me, it's really hot. And I was like, yeah, it's really hot. It's really hot. It's like, okay, cool. And then a few minutes later, he says to me, oh man, I'm sweating. I was like, yeah, it's really hot out there today. Because he's telling me something, I'm just not getting it. So Samira recognizes that obviously I'm not following along. She comes quietly behind me. Says, he's telling you to turn the fan on. I'm like, he never said anything about the fan. He keeps talking about being hot. He could have just said, turn the fan on. But in his mind, he's indirect communicator, right? And he's telling me turn the fan on. But his way of saying it is, it's hot today, I'm sweating. And me being the direct kind growing up, I don't get it. I'm like, okay, it's hot, what do I do about it? If he had said turn the fan on, get up and turn the fan on. Knowing these direct and indirect communication style helps us. It'll help you in knowing who you are. It'll help you dealing with the other person. And beyond that, trust me, it will help you get to know your children. Because our kids, now we have both kinds. I have one daughter who's the indirect communicator. She's like, oh, we go to the store, oh, this looks really nice. Initially I never got it. I would come home and then she'd complain to her mom, Dad never bought me this stuff. I'm like, she never asked. So now I need to recognize when she's like, oh, this is really nice. I have to go out. So do you want it? It's like, and then the other child would be straight up, I want this right now. Like, she'll direct communicate. So knowing your communication style becomes important. What are your major influences in life? Like, what has inspired you to do certain things? Because knowing those influences is important. Once you go further down in life, you're going to reflect back on those influences and say, I'm going to take this with me. This is how I want to do things. Because maybe I like this particular sheikh. I really like his style. I like the topics that he talks about. And so when I have a difficulty, when I have a challenge, I'm going to follow the example of this sheikh. But if that sheikh is things that your husband or wife does not like, or follows a different style, it's going to cause a conflict. Right? So knowing that this sheikh has such a big influence on me, being able to recognize that and with your future spouse and say, you know what, let's talk about this. Who are the people who have the most influence on you? Is it Sheikh X, Sheikh Y, Sheikh Z? And then she says, well, I love Sheikh Z. And he says, well, I love Sheikh X. And they're two very different people with two different understandings of Islam, two different outlooks on life. Well, you got things to talk about. Right? What are your priorities in life? What really is your priority in life? We all say, I want a good Muslim to get married. It's a PC thing to say. I want a good Muslim. Alhamdulillah. What does a good Muslim mean? Like, are you looking for somebody who goes to the masjid 5 times a day to praise Allah? Is the definition of a good Muslim somebody who makes it to Jum'ah is good, prays once in a while, is fine, is great? Is somebody who follows a sheikh and follows a tariqah and is signed up? I got 10 minutes left. Seriously? Oh wow. God. Alright. I'll speed up a little. So you have to know what are the things, and I'll give you this quote as I'm speeding up. One person reflected on her divorce. This is again from a research study. If I knew I would be annoyed by too much religion, I would not have married him. He does Islamic activities in all of his free time. He keeps going to the masjid. I really enjoy socializing and going to parties, and so on and so forth. So this is a long quote, I'll go through the whole thing. But the point was, their understanding of Islam was very different. Somebody thinks that good Muslim is one thing, another person says good Muslim is another. Don't just go by the word, by the label. Dig deep. What does it mean? So, why do you want to get married? What are the reasons why you want to get married? Is it for companionship? Are you lonely? Or is it for family and children? You really are interested in having children run around the house and you want to procreate? Is it for physical desires? Is it because for financial reasons? Is it because of pressure? You know what? Your parents are pressuring you, your peers are pressuring you. Hey, you're 30 years old, you haven't got married yet, you're 35 years old, you're never going to get married now. Is it because of pressure? You're like, all right, fine, next person comes along, I'll get married to? And turns out the next person's the wrong person, and then you end up in divorce? So what is the reason why you're getting married? You want to know and be very clear in your mind as to why you're getting married. Right? So one action item would be, write down 3 reasons you want to get married. Like, explore yourself. What really are you getting married for? Are they good reasons? Or are they certain needs that you want fulfilled out of your marriage? Or what are you looking for? Could you go to the next slide, please? Thank you. What are you looking for in a partner? You should know yourself, and you should know the other person also as to what you're looking for in the partner. And so as you're looking for something in your partner, and then maybe the battery's weak on this. Alright, so an action item would be to identify 2 things that you absolutely must have in your partner. And then identify 2 nice to haves. So the must haves are, if that person does not have these 2 items, they're off the list. I cannot get married to them. Nice to have is icing on the cake. It's, if it's there, it's great. But if they don't have it, it's okay. I can still work through this. That might seem like a simple exercise, but it's actually very challenging. Because you have to actually sit down and think, what do I absolutely want? Because this will guide my decision making down the road. Oh, too far back. No? Alright, here, sorry. And now we can talk about compatibility, and you have very little time.
So just to kind of go back to that issue of the must-haves and the needs. Again, people may not realize how fundamentally important it is, but recognize that everyone's must-haves and needs are may be very different. So when I did this process for myself many years back, there were certain things that were very particular to me. To me, I had 2 criteria, right? I needed someone who's going to be Muslim, who's going to be Islamically active, right? Because that was my life. It's been my life. I've been serving the community for 30 some odd years. Day and night, being an activist is a very different lifestyle than normal people lifestyle, right? We're not going to have fresh cooked meals every single day. That's just not a reality. We're not going to be able to have as much time together, just vegetate on the couch and watch TV. That just does not happen in our house, right? But I need to make sure that that's what I need to breathe to feel connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If that's like something so important to me, I need to make sure my spouse understands, appreciates, and wants to be my partner. Now, my sister is nothing like me. Yeah, it's important, it's nice, but it isn't what she breathes and lives for, right? And she can do fine without Islamic activism. She doesn't need someone like that. I needed someone who could deal with an extended family. I come from a 500 plus extended family. And that's not pretty normal for people. And if you can't deal with a lot of noise, with a lot of people, and everybody telling you what to do, when to do it, how to do it, it can be very overwhelming. So to me, those are 2 factors that I needed in a spouse. Now that may not be what you need. And so those were some of the things that I said, these 2 things I absolutely need. Some of the other things, you're not going to get in everybody. Nobody's perfect. I'm not perfect. Your spouse is not going to be perfect. And so being very clear about what those absolutes are and being very honest with yourself.
I would add this point about being critically honest with yourself. Especially with the guys, I'll tell you. The guys would say, I want an intelligent sister. Okay, great. You want an intelligent sister. Why? Well, I want to have these discussions. And then they want to have discussions. And then later on in marriage, you're like, well, you married an intelligent sister. She's got an opinion. At the same time, you want to force your opinion down her throat. I told you to do it. You obey my order. So, but you said you wanted an intelligent sister who has a mind, who can argue with you, discuss with you, debate with you, so you come up with the best solution. But now you're telling her, switch off your mind and just obey my order. Right? So be very clear, be honest with yourself. That if you're asking for somebody who's an intelligent person, they will discuss with you. Don't ask them to disobey you, because that's being unfair to them.
And that's what that process, if you have that clarity, then you can have that honest discussion with the other individual. Say, this is something that's extremely important to me. How do you feel about that? Right? Again, there are conversations that are starters to kind of dig deeper into, is this going to be something that you're working into? So now we talk about considering compatibility. If you move to the next slide. Thank you. Ayat from the Quran, they are your garments and you are their garments, right? And so, subhanAllah, that's the most beautiful and accurate analogy when you think about marriage. If you think about your clothes, if you take a clothing that needs to be dry cleaned and you put it in the washer, what's going to happen? It's going to get ruined. If you throw your clothes on the ground and have it all over the place and you don't put it on a nice hanger and iron it and make it look nice, it's going to be crumpled. Right? How you take care of the clothing will have an impact on the longevity of the clothing. Now, if you're a size 12 and you wear a size 2 sweater, is that going to look good on you? No. If you have the wrong size, it's not going to look good. If you're in a climate where it's very hot, if you wear wool, that's not going to work for you. Right? So understanding this ayah from the Quran is so important because there's so much depth in it. And it's so related to marriage. And if you don't have the right clothing and compatibility, now some things can change a little bit here and there, but you have to understand the fundamentals. Are the fundamentals in line? And so that's why compatibility is important. So when we talk about compatibility, we're talking about multiple different things. Connection, commonality, communication, and chemistry. Right? And chemistry, just because you see someone and you get excited and you get butterflies, that doesn't mean that's compatibility. It just means you're attracted to them. Right? And attraction is important, but it shouldn't be the sole indicator of if there's compatibility. And how do you know if there is that compatibility? So 3 factors that help in the process, not the question, but the process, is talking, time together, and time, right? So being together and time. And so what you want to do is you want to make sure you talk about many different topics, issues, and really go through that process to see and understand their worldview. And there are many different topics. These are some of the topics that are most common. And the other thing is make sure you spend time together. Get to know their family, get to know them. But in doing so, make sure you maintain Islamic boundaries. Because what often happens, especially in the current context, is many people are on college campuses and there's a lot of basically dating happening. And what often happens is we make decisions based on hormones as opposed to a logical decision-making process. Right? So there's a reason why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has certain recommendations and restrictions and what's allowed and not allowed. So make sure to maintain that because that is mainly a safeguard for yourself. Right? And so, but make sure you do spend time with their family, and once you get a little bit more serious, to see how do they treat their siblings, how do they treat their parents, how do they treat your family, how do they treat you. Those are all data points for you to understand and consider when you talk about marriage. So I'm going to speed along just because we don't have much time. But a critical important thing is to do not ignore the red flags. So what we find is that oftentimes when you take a more emotional approach, ooh, he's cute, or oh, he's so nice, or she's so nice. You take that approach, you don't take a logical approach, you ignore the red flags. So one of the things that's really important is to do the marriage preparation before you have someone in mind. And you really should be starting end of high school and college, beginning of college. As parents who are here, start talking to your kids in high school. Like, not saying get married, but just saying, hey, I know you are starting to be attracted to the opposite gender, and that's cool. Okay, when you find someone, if you find someone, let us know. And we'll take over and do background check and help you out. Now, if you're on campus here, your parents are back home, have someone in the community elder, if you find someone, to kind of to do the background research for you as opposed to you, because sometimes you get more emotionally involved, and you don't want to get emotionally involved until you've gone through the thought process and kind of go through that and kind of can reflect on some of those challenges. So what are some of the red flags? Again, the red flags you'll discover as you interact with them and as you observe them in different settings. Does he or she make you feel guilty? Does he take money from you? Does he not listen or she not listen to your opinion? Do they ignore you or give you the silent treatment when you have a disagreement? Do they blame all the issues? If you would just listen to me, we wouldn't have this issue. Do they put you down? Do they monitor everything you're doing on social media? Do they not want you spending time with your family and friends? These are all red flags that you need to be aware of. And when you go on this process of seeing, when you have identified an individual, if you notice, if you're doing this by yourself, you're more likely to ignore these things. But if you're doing it with an elder, that person can start noticing that. And that's why if your parents are involved, the community, auntie or uncle are involved in that process, or someone who's married and has gone through this, they can help you figure out, hey, this may be a red flag, let's investigate this more. Let's look into this a little bit more. This pattern doesn't feel right. One person, that I'm very close to, she started noticing these red flags. Right? She hadn't done the pre-marriage, even though I kept telling her over and over again. Started noticing. And she noticed that she felt uncomfortable, she was stressed around her husband, or her fiancé, and everything, but she couldn't get over the red flags. And she got married, and that marriage lasted 2 years. That's it. Because these red flags, which she noticed, and even 2 days before her marriage, she said, should I go through with this or not? She asked me. And I guided her, and I said, well, are there red flags? Do you see them? Are you willing to overcome them? It's not marriage. And she said, no. Maybe he'll change. He didn't. There's certain things you cannot change. Do not go into a marriage thinking your spouse will change. That's one of the biggest mistakes. You think, oh, well, if he truly loves me, or if she truly loves me, he or she will change. That doesn't happen. So when you marry, make sure you're okay with who you're marrying and what you're marrying on the big things. If the style of clothing and all that kind of stuff. Those are things that you want to ignore and give up on. But the other things, the character aspects, arrogance is the number one issue that gets into marriage problems. When one of the two spouses is arrogant and not willing to look at their role in the marriage, it will destroy the marriage. Right? So that's probably the number one red flag I would tell you, warn you about. And again, there's an entire list of red flags, entire list of multiple questions to ask in the marriage toolkit on the website. So after you've done, is this you or me? Okay, after you've done the preparation, you spent time knowing yourself, understanding what are my strengths, what are my weaknesses, what are the areas that I need to work on, what are the issues that I need to address before getting married. Then you find someone, you go through the questioning process, you have a third person or involved kind of helping you, guiding you, reflecting back on that, you kind of assess the compatibility. Throughout this process, make a sahara. right? Make istikhara. And ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide you and make this process easy for you. And if it's easy for you, inshallah, go with it. Okay? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is guiding this process. And even with our marriage, right? Almost 3 times the engagement broke up. Right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala kept bringing us back together. And I was like, oh, I don't know why. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had a plan. Like, the plan, I guess, was for us to be here talking about this. Right? And so, if it's meant to happen, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make it easy. And if it doesn't, be content with the will of Allah. Right? There were individuals who I thought were perfect for me when we were going through the marriage process. I talked to my parents about it. And they were good people. I know them today, right? Great people. But they would not have been good for me. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had a better plan. And got me the more perfect husband. And alhamdulillah, because of that, we're able to do this work. Right? And so, again, it's remembering that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is in control of everything and does everything for a particular reason at a particular time. So trust Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for that.
I want everybody's phone numbers after this so that next time we have a problem, you will be witnesses. She said the perfect husband. So,
It's perfect husband.
You said perfect.
Perfect.
Yeah, so next time we have a problem, I'll call you guys to be the witness.
Alhamdulillah.
Just in the interest of time, we're going to move forward, inshallah. Again, helpful tools, etc. The thing that I wanted to get to was this toolkit that we have online. So if you go to our website, thefyi.org/toolkits, I think right now probably the first or second toolkit. There's a whole lot of different toolkits that we have, but one of them would be the marriage prep toolkit. And so almost everything that we've talked about here today, you can find it online. Right? So the list of questions to ask, the things to consider, a lot of the issues that you should be thinking about, different circumstances, different scenarios are laid out. So it's got a whole textbook. So I seriously encourage you to go through that and share that with everybody else that you know. That this is one good source of marriage education. That there are too many marriages that are happening without the education, without the counseling, that end up falling apart. That they're like, they didn't have to. They didn't have to go through this pain. If you just learned a little bit about it beforehand, you could have avoided a lot of the pain. So we really want to encourage this. It has videos, it has articles, it has a lot of information that can be very useful, inshallah. So it goes through the section, there's 8 different sections there, as you can see on the screen right now. Benefits of marriage preparation, what can you do as an individually, personally to prepare, making the decision to commit or not to commit, some of the red flags that are there, the process to follow, who to involve, who not to involve, depending on your scenarios, depending on who's around, who's not around. There's a lot of in-depth material that's available online that I really encourage everybody to get through. So this is an example of an article that has within it a whole bunch of links. So as you read the article, you say, all right, let me click on this, click on this, you see a lot more information available, inshallah. Next slide, please. Okay, so. And then there's different workshops, like I said, this is 1 hour long, simple lecture that we have summarized. We actually have a full 6 hour long workshop. More than happy to come to your location, wherever you are, and spend the whole day going through exercises, doing role plays where people actually get on stage and talk to each other in different circumstances, different situations, actually walking through some of the issues that we raised, and then a whole lot of other issues also. So, and I'm sure there are other workshops also available, but utilize those. And there's one for parents as well. We have workshops for the young people who are getting married, and then for the parents. Sometimes the parents are the problem. Young people are not the problem. The parents are the ones who need to get over their issues. So there's a separate workshop that we have to help the parents understand that the child is now an adult and is going through a lot of this, and not to put in obstacles when need to be. For those of you who may not know about the FYI, it's a research-based institute. We do research and education. We have a booth outside that has a whole lot of books, workshop material that we have produced in the past. So feel free to look through that. We also have our brochures and postcards. Take those, not the books. The books are to view only. And the type of things that we do, there's... Oops. one of the slides. Okay, well, there was something missing on the side. I thought I changed this slide. Oh, I didn't change it on the flash drive. That's fine. All right. So I was going to say, follow us on social media if you like. Best way, really, because social media, as you know, you're dependent on the algorithm. You might like us on Facebook, but you don't see all of our postings because depending on the algorithm that changes every day, what shows up in your newsfeed will be different. So the best way, if you really want to follow along and see all the resources that we have, is to join our email list. So if you go to our website, thefI.org, right at the bottom, something should be there. You can subscribe to our email list, inshallah. And with that email, it will always be in your inbox. You can read the articles. We send out one article a day, just one article, because everybody's busy. You can't have time to read too much. But 3 to 5 minutes worth of reading, different topics, marriage, elder care, youth, whole bunch of different things. So you can, inshallah, benefit from that 1 to 2 reading a day. A little bit every day will, inshallah, increase a lot of knowledge. Any questions?
For the very beneficial talk. I know Paula and I will definitely go onto the website and check out all of the things that you have on there, and I encourage you all also to visit the website. I do want to make sure that we have some time for Q&A. We have about 10 minutes, so I will go around with the microphone and we can start with questions, inshallah.
Assalamualaikum. So I've always been told that no matter how hard you try, you won't be able to pick up every single personality of someone before you're married. So is there like a way to pick up every subtle nuance of a relationship before you get married?
No, but you can increase your odds, right?
Okay.
Because you'll never know anyone until you really live with them, spend time with them, and all that. But what you do is we're trying to show you the process of increasing your chances. And even after you've done everything, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala could change your heart, right? And that's why we have the dua of, Ya Allah, right? So you always make sure you keep your heart stable and connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So anybody could change. And we know the example of different individuals who during the Prophet's time, even though they were in Mecca, right? And they were in Mecca, they withstood all the torture and everything. When they went to Abyssinia, they left Islam, right? So anybody's deen can change, and so that's one of the things. Their deen can change, their personality can change. So many different things can change after the fact. But what we try to do is you make sure you do the best that you can with the information that you have. And so that's what we're trying to do.
All right, thank you.
Do we have any other questions?
Okay, so I want to share my story. I've been married for about 4 years now, and I was 25 when I get married, and my husband was 24, so he's a little bit younger than me. Before we get married, we are agreed to each other that we are going to be an equal partner. We have our own work, we have our own earnings, we separate our. So his money is his money, my money is my money. We both contribute to our household bills, and we are agreed to divide our household chores before marriage. But then, when we get married and we live together, just the two of us, that just doesn't happen, the household chores. So when I get back from work, I cook, I clean the house, I clean everything, I do every household chores, and he was just sitting there playing video games. So what I learned is, actually marriage is about a constant problem-solving activities. At that time I was, okay, I will just do this today, but tomorrow you're gonna do the dishes. And the next day, it just doesn't happen. So then, I set the rules. You get to play video games after you clean the dishes. So apparently, 3 treating your husband is like treating your kids. So, but then it works for me. So so that's just what happened in my marriage. It's a constant problem solving. It's more or less same thing as parenting, because he is younger than me, he behaves like a boy. I don't know. Yeah, so that's our story. And
Can I add to something?
Yeah.
I think one of the things is what that story highlights is the fact that sometimes we get married when we think we're married, we're ready to get married, when there's still a lot of maturity needs to take place. Because that often happens, and if that maturity process hasn't taken place, this is the type of thing that happens. You agree to things beforehand, but yes, I'll do this, I'll do that. But when you live with each other, there's a different reality. And that's why when you're going through this compatibility process, we didn't talk about it today, but the importance of background checks. I cannot tell you how important that is. Not just in terms of, okay, someone says that, but what has his behavior or her behavior been like in the past? And that's why, so for example, if you're spending time with their family, after dinner, are they just sitting there? Or are they helping to put the plates and everything away? Are they expecting to be served, or are they serving, right? Those are the data points you want to see. If they're expecting to be served, and they just sit at the table and they're not helping out, that's data for you, right? That tells you what that person is going to be like. And so you have to see the person in multiple different situations, not just take their verbal, what they say, because they're going to be perfect after marriage. Nobody thinks they're going to be the bad guy. And so really looking at those factors.
I would like to add that when you're asking questions and talking to each other, quite often you might say things just to please the other person. So your husband may have said, sure, I'll do this, no problem, because he wants to get married. And even then, he may not have had the intention. Allah. It's like, yeah, you know what, no, we'll deal with it afterwards. Right now, I gotta answer these questions. Yes, good, we're good to go. So it's important, and it might be lighthearted, but there are other issues. But again, you try to give the answer that you think the other person's looking for. You just want to make the other person happy. But you don't believe in that answer. You may not act on it. And so when you are discussing and talking to the other person, you want to ask the same question 3 different ways. You want to ask them in 3 different situations. You want to ask them from 3 different sources. And triangulate and say, do you get consistent answers? If you're not getting consistent answers, if you ask, you get one answer, you ask the question with different wording in a different circumstance, different answers, like, why the different answers? Maybe they don't really believe in their answers. They're just reading the situation, and based on that, they're answering. And that should give you some pause. That's a red flag. It's like, okay, this is not who the person really is. And so you really want to dig down and ask who the person really is, right?
And to add to that, also to make sure that if you're the one who's answering the question, be brutally honest, right? Tell them the answer that is actually reflective of who you are, not what you want to project. Because the problem will hit you in the end. You're going to be the one impacted. And if you're not used to doing that, you be honest that, I'm used to do it, but I want to try. Right? Or, this is not something I feel comfortable with. Then that you're giving them accurate information, and then they have a choice if they want to go on with this or not. Don't pretend to be somebody you're not, because that's the individual, and then that's going to make things miserable.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you for the great presentation. I feel very fortunate to came across the red flags because I have never actually seen that type of list, and I found some of them are really interesting. I have 2 questions. First one is specifically about tell you how to dress. What is that actually inferring to? And then second, some of the points are, I feel like it's really hard to actually know about it until I get to actually spend time, which I don't think, for instance, like monitor your text. If I'm going through like a ta'aruf and then he's not gonna, grab my phone, see my text before I get into that level of like, connection, or I guess like affection. I don't know what's the word. So yeah, please help me to explain that. Thank you.
So I'll start with the second one first, and then come to the first one. So recognize that this process has different phases, right? In your initial phase, first time dating, no, people aren't going to be doing that or looking at your social media when you look at your phone. But as you progress, what could happen is you post something on Twitter, or you post something on Facebook, or you post something, and he or she might be like, what were you doing there? Oh, what's going on? Oh, I'm just curious. Oh, I'm just asking, right? And they're like checking, following you every single thing, that's concerning. And if they're saying, why'd you go there? Why do you need to go there? That's not important. And then like force, that is problematic. You could have there could be a very good reason. Like it could be that something happened to somebody in their family and so they're really concerned about it. It could be that, or it could be controlling kind of sense coming out that you're picking up on. We don't know, but you need to figure that out beforehand. Because if it's controlling, that could be very problematic. The second.
So I just want to clarify, I think the way you said it, I just want to make sure we understood what we were saying in terms of the slide. When we say check the person's social media, they're not physically giving you their phone and saying, hey, go through my phone. That won't happen. But you could be following them on Facebook and following them on Twitter, etc., and seeing what they're posting. That's what Samira is referring to. And so similarly, the other person's following you, so every time you're posting something, so they don't have access to your physical phone, but they're following all the things that you're posting. And then the questions that come up based on them following you is what all this is.
Why did you need to go there? Why did you have that part? That's usually later on in the kind of getting to know each other phase, and maybe you're interested in that type of stuff. The issue of clothing, right, is that's a different issue in terms of what, for example, this usually tends to happen between a husband and a wife or a male and a female. Why you dress this way? This is not appropriate. This is, I don't like the way you're doing dress this way, right? And then again, that's a manifestation of controlling. Right? The issue of the modesty and all that, that's an issue that between you and Allah, right? And your spouse can kind of encourage you, hey, what about this? This looks really nice. I really like it when you look like that, when you wear this. It's very different than, I don't want you wearing this. I don't want you going out. I don't want you doing this. That's an issue of control. And that's what you have to be careful of. Because what happens to the individual, you may say, okay, it's not a big deal, I'll just do it for him. I'll just do it for her. It's not a big deal. It's not a big deal. But inside, the resentment grows. And as the resentment grows, anger, frustration, the hurt, your self-esteem, all of that. And that negatively impacts the relationship. And if you think long-term in terms of family life, if you have kids, it impacts the kids as well. And so what people don't realize is this relationship can have an impact on the well-being of the next generation. And so while they may seem minimal at the beginning, they can mush them into something much bigger. And so that's what we're trying to catch before it gets to it.
Assalamualaikum. I just want to ask you, what are the signs of good in-laws? Because I heard a lot of stories, similar stories from my India, Pakistani female friends who has their mother-in-laws who treat them like a free servant, basically. So it's hard for them to go out. They have to cook all day for their mother-in-law and etc. So I thought it was like one case or two cases, but then I heard like until from 5 of my female friends who has this ethnic background. So that scares me because I only have daughters. And then, yeah, so I just want to ask you what should I, my daughter want to get married and I want them to have good in-laws, so what are the signs of good in-laws?
So again, in terms of the questioning process, one thing to recognize is each culture has different norms, right? So if you're marrying outside of your cultural norms, make sure you understand their other cultural norms and you're comfortable with those cultural norms. That's one. Second thing is, when you're in the marriage communication process, is to ask those questions. What do you typically do in your family? For example, what I would do in case if your daughter is looking talking to somebody who was South Asian background. And I would talk to their family and say, have someone who's older sibling. Talk to the older sibling who's already married and say, okay, that in-law, what is the relationship like? How does your mother-in-law treat you, right? You'd want to find out from somebody who's already in the marriage to get the specifics of that. If you don't have someone else in that family, ask about the extended family. What are the extended family norms? So those are the types of questions you want to ask. In terms of the mentality of mother-in-law, father-in-law, you want to figure out what are their expectations. Is the person expecting for them to leave the house all the time, be their servant, or do they recognize, okay, maybe my mother-in-law did that to me, but I'm going to be right? And really understand and have those conversations, but back that up with data. What happens in other families that they're close to. Because what could happen is you marry your daughter off to a young man, and that mother-in-law is like, go for it, do what you want to do, I want you to study, I'll take care of the cooking, I'll help you out, I not have any expectation. But what if all of her friends then pressure her and was like, why are you letting our daughter-in-law do this, and why are you, all those types of things, and that social pressure, then the mother-in-law becomes difficult. And so that puts on the daughter-in-law who, initially she was okay with, right? So you want to know what is her circle of friends, what are their norms, what their norms are. And so those are the ways you try to figure out what can you expect, and is that something you want to agree for, right?
So I was just told that her prayer was delayed a little bit, so we have another 10 minutes for questions.
Yes, brother or sister. About the red flag, one of them is how to dress. I got that all the time. But I don't see that's a red flag for me. I don't know, The next thing is the financial. What happened with the husband money is wife money, and the wife money is wife money. Do they still exist at this time? I don't know. That's a problem.
I think that points to the point that we have a severe lack of education within our community, right? A lot of times what happens is we don't know our deen, and because we don't know our deen, we adopt what is prevalent in society. So what's prevalent in society here is the woman takes the husband's name, the woman and men have joint shared accounts, all of that. But Islam, woman maintains her name, maintains her finances, maintains all her stuff. It's separate from the man, right? But many of our young people don't know that, and they adopt what everybody else is doing. And part of that is our fault as parents to not empower our kids with the knowledge of what does Islam say about these marriage topics. The Islam is a very pro-sexual religion, right? Having those honest conversations, we're so uncomfortable with those conversations. We don't talk about intimacy. We don't talk about what matters is important. We have an agency. We don't talk about the importance of rahmah in the relationship. It's not just about your responsibility and my responsibilities. What's best for the family, right? All of these conversations. If we look at our seerah of the Prophet ﷺ, there were instances when Sahabiyas would come up to the Prophet and say, "Look, my husband is really poor, doesn't have any money, but I have a lot of wealth. Is it okay for me to give him some money from my wealth, right?" And the Prophet ﷺ said, yes, of course, you can do it. But he was protecting females' rights because he wanted to make sure that we were not abused. We were not used. And so that is why there is that separation, right? Because to give females agency. But for us to have that rahmah with our spouses, we'll get reward, right? We get reward supporting and helping if you want to, if they need to. And if they don't need it, that's fine. Right? We can use it for other good causes, to give money to causes, to other people who maybe who may be orphans or maybe struggling, all of those things, then we get the opportunity to get that award. But I think that's the issue is the education is what we lack. And I'm thankful for the organizers to have this opportunity so we can start empowering our generation to understand, okay, these are the rights, these are the responsibilities, this is what you want to do in the process. We didn't cover rights and responsibilities because a lot of that is available online. What we really wanted to cover is what is this process to make good decisions. And so that's why we focus on that today.
So I think we have time for one more question, inshallah.
Thank you very much. Many times this premarital conversation are misunderstood as the thing that hinders people to have to get married or to have a halal relationship, because getting married is one way to like avoid zina, and then like people would also think that this is also important, and you can have these conversations after you get married. And so how do we communicate the importance of this conversation to people who still think that way? What my question is.
I think I lost the question.
So let me try to play back what I thought I heard. So you're saying, there are different reasons to get married. One of the reasons is to prevent zina, and also other reasons. And so if somebody's approaching you for marriage, it's like, all right, let's get married first, and then we can have these discussions later, or we can figure things out as we go along.
Yeah.
But we have some basic things, let's move on first. So my answer to that would be, no, absolutely not. Don't do that too fast. You want to go through this process. You want to slow it down. Because once you're married, getting an answer might be too late. And you're figuring out at that point that this person is not the person for me, you're already married. And you're now looking at a divorce process. And it's a very challenging, very emotionally draining, very damaging process. In terms of it's hurtful. I mean, it happens, and inshallah, people recover, etc. But you don't get into a marriage with the goal of getting divorced. You aim in getting married to stay married, inshallah, for a long time. If something happens, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows divorce, and you can continue with it. But going into it, you want to slow the person down. So like, listen, if you really are interested in a long-term commitment, then you should not have a short-term mindset. You should have a long-term mindset on it. And that long-term mindset is, let's talk about these things. Let's talk about the premarital education. Let's do premarital counseling. Let's discuss the 101 questions that you find on the website. What do you think about it? What do you think about it? And you have to force them to, no, give me honest answers. Don't just give me, yeah, sure. Okay, let's go on. No, if you give me, yeah, sure, that tells me you don't value me. You don't take me seriously. I'm not valuable enough that you can slow down and actually give me a straight answer. You're just playing with me like a toy. And if you're not going to treat me with respect now, how do I expect you to treat me with respect later? So you really want to slow down this process and go through this in a very serious fashion. If that other person is not willing to do that, that by itself is a huge red flag. Because that person is not going to respect you later on. And he's going to abuse you in many different ways. So this would be a good red flag to you.
Can I add to that? We've been married 22 years, and actually, just like what she said, my wife and I didn't know each other when we get married. And when people said, oh, so that's basically like finding your soulmate, and because like something happened by chance, and we got married and we stayed together for a long time. And yeah, I totally disagree with that. And what you said is right. I think it's not that my marriage is a mistake, but it's a mistake to get married without knowing your would-be wife. But after we get married, everything is basically about choices. If you want to stay together, then there are some choices that you have to make for her, and there are choices that she had to make for me, and so on. And I mean, like, every to make that, and alhamdulillah, by the blessing of Allah, still going. But yeah, I agree that maybe those choices can be worked out beforehand, and it would be better.
Jazakallah khair. Great point. And so this emphasizes one of the very early points that we had made. So what we talked about is a process for our North American context, right? And our culture as it stands today. Now, people who come from a different cultural context, different realities, would have different ways. My parents got married, they saw each other the day they got married, right? So they were actually in different places physically, far away. It was you send a photograph and you see the person they got married. But the mindset that my mother came into the marriage with was like, I'm getting married, I'm going to make this work no matter what it is. The culture around was that everybody happens that way. Everybody gets married first, and then they get to know each other, and then nobody gets divorced. You deal with it, however it is. People who are unhappy in their marriages for so long, the culture says you deal with it. Because divorce is such a bad thing, negative stigma, etc. But that's a culture in those countries, right? And so people make things work. What we're talking about is here in America. It's like, no, we don't want that because life is different. That's not our culture here. People don't, like young people, Samira mentioned, like the people that our age who got married, half of them are divorced now. Because their parents may have come from that culture and they may have gotten forced into getting married, but the young people growing up here, it's like everybody feels the right to do their things, right? Like, you know what, this is not working out for me, I'm going to walk out. It is not like things in other countries where no matter how much things are not working out, the societal pressure is that no, you're going to stay with it, doesn't matter how much, you're never going to get divorced. So you're going to make it work. That's not how life is here. But even life is over there is changing also. The point is, what we talked about for our context here, for our culture here, things may work in different places, in different points in time, they won't work. So we need to be very clear on where you're getting married, the time, place, the cultural surrounding, so that you are doing things accordingly, inshallah.
Okay, I'm going to end the session here, inshallah. May Allah make it easy for those who are looking for a spouse, that you will find the right one, inshallah. Those who are already married, may Allah continue to bless their marriage for a long time. Jazakallahu khairan, Dr. Sina and Dr. Nudin. The information was very beneficial.